New York never slept, but I, Sofia Miller, was too exhausted to dream anymore. At 22, with skin the color of rich mahogany and a one-room apartment in the Bronx that barely fit a bed and a hot plate, I spent my nights at L'Oubli, a French fine dining restaurant in Manhattan that prided itself on perfection and delivered cruelty in equal measure. I was a server, weaving between tables with trays of foie gras and escargot, smiling through the ache in my feet and the knot in my stomach. But inside, I was more than that. I had a gift, the kind my grandmother passed down in her tiny Brooklyn kitchen, where she taught me to taste before I touched, to smell the earth in mushrooms, to balance acid and salt with nothing but instinct. I could have been a chef. I knew the knife cuts from culinary school videos I watched on repeat, could blind taste a sauce and name every herb. But school cost money I didn't have, and dreams didn't pay rent. So I stayed at L'Oubli, where the real power sat in the kitchen, ruled by Chef Hank Thorne, a white man nearing 50, tall and broad, with a reputation that preceded him like the scent of burnt garlic. Hank was brilliant, yes, but brilliance came wrapped in arrogance. He barked orders like weapons, threw plates when a sear wasn't perfect, and claimed every compliment as his own. No matter who'd stirred the pot, he was worst with women, and worse still with women like me. Black, young, no formal credentials. To Hank, I was invisible until he needed someone to belittle. "Move faster, girl," he'd snap in front of the line cooks, his voice carrying to the dining room. "This isn't your mama's kitchen." The cooks, mostly men, mostly silent, would chuckle, and I'd swallow the burn, focusing on the tables, the tips, the rent due in 2 weeks. But Hank's cruelty wasn't always loud. In quiet moments, when the rush slowed and the stock pots simmered, he'd find reasons to linger. "Need help in the walk-in?" he'd ask, his voice too smooth. And I'd go because refusing meant trouble. Inside the cold storage, he'd stand too close, his hand brushing my waist as he reached for an ingredient. "Careful," he'd murmur, his breath on my neck, his fingers lingering on my arm longer than necessary. Once, as I lifted a crate of shallots, he leaned in, his voice low. "You have lips that make a man want to taste, like ripe mulberries." I froze, my skin crawling, but he stepped back with a smirk, as if it was a joke. It wasn't. I wanted to quit, to scream, to record him, but he was careful, always words with double meanings. Never enough for a complaint that would stick. In a place like L'Oubli, where reputation was everything, no one would side with a server over a star chef. I needed the job, so I endured my grandmother's voice in my head. "Hold your head high, baby. Your talent will speak one day." That night changed everything. The restaurant was hosting Ethan Caldwell, the British billionaire food critic, whose reviews could make or break a place. Hank was in rare form, obsessing over a truffle risotto, his signature. I watched from the pass as he shaved black truffles, but I knew something was off. The mushrooms were out of season, their earthy depth replaced by a bitter edge. When he plated it, I hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Chef, the truffles, they're not at peak. The risotto might taste bitter." He turned, his eyes narrowing, a ladle of boiling sauce in his hand. The kitchen fell silent. "You're telling me how to cook?" He sneered, loud enough for the line to hear. "You're nothing but a tray carrier with delusions." Before I could respond, he flicked the ladle, splattering hot sauce across the cutting board, inches from my hand. The heat radiated, a warning. "Know your place," he hissed, then turned back to his station, dismissing me like smoke. I stood there, my hand steady despite the sting in my chest, the cooks averting their eyes. But inside, Something ignited, not fear, not defeat, but resolve. If no one would give me a chance, I'd take one. My grandmother's lessons, my instinct, my talent, they were mine. Hank could throw sauce, steal credit, make me feel small, but he couldn't take what burned inside me. As I carried the risotto to Ethan's table, my steps sure, I vowed silently, one day the kitchen would hear my voice, not his, and when it did, it would taste the difference. The evening at Lubli felt different, the air heavier with anticipation. The dining room was quieter than usual, the clink of silverware subdued, as if the restaurant itself sensed the importance of the guest at table 12. Ethan Caldwell, the British billionaire whose palate and pen could elevate or ruin a place overnight, sat alone in the VIP corner. His presence was understated, no entourage, just a tailored suit and eyes that missed nothing. Word had spread through the staff. One wrong note, and Lubli's reputation could crack. I moved through my section with practiced grace, my tray balanced, my smile fixed, despite the ache from last night's shift. Hank's words still echoed, tray carrier with delusions, but I pushed them down, focusing on the rhythm of service. When his truffle risotto was ready, I carried it out, the plate warm in my hands, the aroma rich but off to my trained nose. The bitterness from the out-of-season truffles lingered, a flaw I couldn't ignore. I set the dish before Ethan, my movements smooth. "Your risotto, sir," he nodded, his fork poised. I turned to leave, but the soft tap of metal on porcelain stopped me. One tap, two. He was summoning me back. "Is this the dish you brought?" he asked, his British accent crisp, his gaze direct. "Yes, sir," I said, my voice steady. He leaned forward slightly. "And did you taste it before serving?" The question hung sharp. The nearby tables quieted, servers pausing. From the kitchen pass, I felt Hank's eyes boring into me. "I smelled it," I admitted, choosing honesty. "And I know it's bitter. The truffles are off-season." A murmur rippled through the staff. Hank's face appeared at the pass, red and furious. Ethan set his fork down, his expression unreadable. "Call the chef." Hank strode out, his chef's whites pristine, his chest puffed with confidence. "Mr. Caldwell? I'm Chef Thorne. Is there an issue with my risotto?" Ethan didn't look at him. "I'm not speaking to you yet. I want to know who cooked this the way it should be cooked, because this isn't it. I've had proper truffle risotto in Lyon, made by a woman whose touch was unforgettable. This has none of that depth." Hank's smile faltered. "I assure you, sir, this is my signature." Ethan raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes returned to me. "You said you knew it was bitter. Do you know the right way?" My heart pounded, the room's attention crushing. Hank's glare burned, but something in Ethan's steady gaze gave me courage. "Yes," I said, my voice clearer than I expected. "My grandmother taught me. It's about balance, fresh truffles, proper stock, patience with the rice." Ethan's lips curved faintly. "Prove it." The dining room froze. Hank's face twisted. "She's a server," he snapped. "She doesn't belong in my kitchen." Ethan turned to the manager, who'd hurried over. "If you don't let her cook, I'll write tonight's review as is. Lubli, where talent is buried under ego. Your choice." The manager, pale, glanced at Hank, then me. "Give her the station." Hank's jaw clenched, his eyes promising retribution, but he stepped aside. I walked past him, into the kitchen, the line cooks parting like a sea. The heat enveloped me, familiar yet foreign. This was Hank's domain, not mine. My hands trembled as I tied an apron, but my grandmother's voice whispered, "Cook with love. Baby, let it speak." I assessed the ingredients, discarding the bitter truffles for better ones from the reserve. Arborio rice, homemade stock, fresh Parmigiano. The cooks watched, some skeptical, others curious. Hank loomed in the corner, arms crossed, his silence louder than shouts. I started, the sizzle of butter calming me. Onion sweated translucent, rice toasted golden. Stock added ladle by ladle, stirred with care. The rhythm took over, my grandmother's lessons guiding every motion. The kitchen's hostility faded as the aroma rose. Earthy, creamy, alive. 30 minutes later, I plated it. Risotto creamy, but firm. Truffles shaved thin. A gloss of oil. A sprinkle of cheese. Simple, honest. I carried it out myself, my steps sure, and set it before Ethan. He took a bite, eyes closing briefly. The room held its breath. When he opened them, he set the fork down. This, he said, his voice carrying, is the best risotto I've eaten in New York. Applause broke out, tentative from staff, genuine from guests. Hank's face was stone. Ethan looked at me. Private word? I nodded, my heart racing not from fear, but from the spark of possibility. For the first time, my talent had spoken, and someone powerful had listened. Hank's kingdom had cracked, if only for a night. As I followed Ethan to the back room, I felt the shift. The tray carrier was stepping forward, and the kitchen would never be the same. The kitchen doors swung shut behind me, sealing me in a world of heat, steel, and silence. Lubley's brigade stared line cooks, paused mid-chop, sous chefs with raised eyebrows. The dishwasher frozen at his station. I was Sofia Miller, 22, a server in a black apron, now standing at the main stove in chef's whites that didn't quite fit. The air smelled of butter and thyme, but underneath was tension, thick as rue. Hank Thorne leaned against the walk-in door, arms crossed, his eyes narrowed to slits. He didn't speak, but his presence was a challenge, a dare for me to fail. Ethan Caldwell watched from the glass partition, his expression calm but expectant. The manager hovered nearby, nervous, as if one wrong move could cost the restaurant everything. I tied my hair back tighter, rolled up the sleeves, and breathed in the familiar chaos. My grandmother's voice echoed. Feel the food, baby. Let it tell you what it needs. I started with the basics, my hands moving on instinct. Fresh arborio rice from the dry storage, toasted in a wide pan with a knob of butter until it gleamed translucent. The sizzle grounded me, pushing back the stairs. Onion finely diced, sweated until sweet. White wine splashed in, the sharp scent rising as it reduced. Then the stock homemade chicken, simmered for hours, added ladle by ladle. I stirred constantly, the wooden spoon an extension of my arm, coaxing the rice to release its starch, to become creamy without breaking. The brigade watched, some skeptical, others curious. A young prep cook handed me Parmigiano without being asked, his nod subtle encouragement. Hank shifted, his shadow long across the floor. Careful, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. This isn't your little home setup. I didn't look up. I don't need fancy, I replied evenly. I need quiet. A few cooks exchanged glances, surprise flickering. Hank's laugh was low, mocking, but he stayed back for now. I shaved black truffles, their earthy perfume filling the air, and folded them in gently at the end, with a pat of cold butter for gloss. The risotto was perfect creamy waves, each grain al dente, the truffle singing without overpowering. But Hank wasn't done. As I reached for the finishing cheese, the flame under my pan flickered wildly. Someone had turned the gas valve, the blue fire dancing erratically. The rice risked scorching. My heart raced, but I adjusted the knob calmly, steadying the heat. Then, when I turned to the stock pot for a final ladle, I noticed the liquid thicker, saltier than it should be. Someone had swapped it for a beef reduction, heavy and wrong for the delicate dish. Hank's doing. His smirk confirmed it. The cook saw, but no one spoke. This was his kitchen. Loyalty was fear. I didn't panic. I started over, new pan, fresh stock from the reserve, rice toasted again. My hands flew, efficient from years of watching, learning, dreaming. Sweat beaded on my forehead, but I focused. Grandmother's risotto, the one she made for special Sundays, the one that tasted like love. 30 minutes felt like hours. The kitchen's eyes on me, judging, waiting for me to crumble. Finally, I plated. A perfect mound of risotto. Truffles, shaved thin like dark snow. A drizzle of oil. A sprinkle of cheese. Simple, honest. I garnished with a touch of chive, the green a bright note. My heart pounded as I carried it out, past Hank's glare, to Ethan's table. He took the plate, his movements deliberate. The dining room hushed again. He scooped a bite, closed his eyes, chewed slowly. Seconds stretched. When he opened them, he set the spoon down. "This," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet, "is the best risotto I've tasted in New York." Soft applause rippled from the tables, growing. Servers smiled, genuine this time. Even some cooks peeked out, nodding. Hank stood frozen at the pass, his face a mask, but his eyes burned. Ethan looked at me, his smile real. "Young lady, you have a gift. We need to talk." I stood there, the plate empty before him, my hands still warm from the stove. For the first time in Lubli's unforgiving kitchen, I felt seen not as a server, not as an outsider, but as a chef. Hank's kingdom had trembled, and I'd been the earthquake. As I returned to the kitchen, the brigade parting with new respect, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I'd earned, one perfect bite at a time. The private dining room behind Lubli's main floor was a sanctuary of velvet curtains and low light, a space reserved for the elite. I followed Ethan Caldwell inside, my chef's whites still warm from the stove, my heart racing with a mix of triumph and disbelief. At 22, I'd just cooked in Hank Thorne's kitchen and earned the highest praise from a man whose opinion shaped empires. The risotto's success felt like a door cracking open, but I knew better than to trust it fully, not yet. Ethan gestured to a chair across from him, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. "Sit, Miss Miller. That was extraordinary." I sat, my hands folded to hide their tremble. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. I'm glad it met your expectations." He leaned forward, his British accent measured. It exceeded them. "Where did you learn to cook like that?" I hesitated, the question stirring memories I rarely shared. "My grandmother," I said softly. "She had a small place in Brooklyn. She taught me everything how to taste, how to feel the food. She never had a big kitchen, but her dishes, they made people feel cared for." Ethan's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition. "Your grandmother," he said slowly. "Would her name have been Evelyn Miller?" My breath caught. "Yes. How did you?" He smiled, genuine and wistful. "I ate at her restaurant once, years ago. A tiny spot, but her risotto, it was unforgettable. I wrote to invite her to collaborate on a project in Europe, but the letter returned undelivered. I learned later she'd passed. I'm sorry." The room blurred for a moment. Grandma Evelyn, gone when I was 17, had been my world. "She never mentioned a letter," I whispered. "She would have been honored." "I tasted her in your dish tonight," Ethan said. "The same balance, the same heart. You've inherited more than recipes." His words wrapped around me, warm and validating. For the first time, my talent felt seen, not as a fluke, but as legacy. But the moment shattered when a server burst in, his face pale. "Mr. Caldwell, there's an issue in the kitchen. Chef Thorne, he's demanding to speak with you." Ethan stood, his brow furrowing. "Stay here," he told me. But I followed anyway, my instinct pulling me back to the fray. The kitchen was chaos. Hank stood at the pass, his face flushed, a ruined plate shattered on the floor. The brigade hovered, tense. "This is my kitchen," Hank barked at the manager. "That girl's stunt doesn't change anything." Ethan entered, his presence commanding silence. "Explain." Hank pointed at me. "She sabotaged my original dish to make herself look good. I have witnesses." Gasps rippled. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "That's not true. I cooked what you asked for, fresh. Honest. Your risotto was bitter because of the truffles you chose." Hank's eyes flashed. "You're a liar. You swapped ingredients to humiliate me." The manager looked stricken. Ethan turned to the cooks. "Anyone see this?" A young prep cook, the one who'd handed me cheese earlier, spoke up hesitantly. "I saw Chef Thorne adjust the stock pot after she started. It wasn't the same when she used it." Hank's face drained of color. Another cook nodded. "The gas valve, too. It flickered right after she turned away." The truth hung heavy. Ethan's gaze hardened on Hank. "You tampered with her dish," Hank stammered. But the manager stepped in. "Chef Thorne, this is unacceptable. You're suspended, effective immediately. We'll review your contract." Hank's mouth opened, closed. He glared at me, then stormed out, the door swinging violently behind him. The kitchen exhaled, the brigade exchanging looks, relief, perhaps vindication. Ethan turned to me, his voice calm. "You've proven yourself tonight, Miss Miller. Lubli doesn't deserve you. I'd like to back you your own place, your vision. No strings, just investment in talent I believe in." I stood there, the shattered plate at my feet, Hank's exit echoing. At 22, I'd fought for scraps in his shadow, endured his barbs, his unwanted closeness. Now, the door he'd guarded was open, not because he allowed it, but because I'd earned it. "Thank you," I said, my voice firm. "But I'll build it my way with my name, my recipes." Ethan smiled. "I wouldn't have it otherwise." I untied the apron, handing it to the manager. The kitchen watched as I walked out, not as a server, but as a chef. Hank was gone, his grip broken. Lubli would survive, but without me and without him, it would never be the same. As I stepped into the cool Manhattan night, the city lights brighter than before, I felt the weight lift. Grandma's legacy wasn't buried anymore. It was rising, one perfect dish at a time. The road ahead was mine to carve, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to take it. A year after that fateful night at Lubli, the streets of southern Manhattan buzzed with a new kind of energy around a small corner spot called Maison de Feu House of Fire. No grand banners, no flashy opening with champagne fountains or celebrity guests. Just a simple sign, hand-painted, and a line of people stretching down the block from late afternoon, menus clutched in eager hands, the aroma of butter, truffles, and slow-simmered stock wafted out, drawing them like a promise. I was Sofia Miller, 23 now, standing in my own kitchen, the whites fitting perfectly, my name embroidered on the chest. The space was modest, open-flame stoves, wooden counters worn just enough to feel lived in, walls lined with herbs in clay pots. My team, many former Lubli staff who'd endured Hank's reign, moved with quiet efficiency. They called me Chef Sofia, not out of fear, but respect earned through shared late nights and honest feedback. No one shouted, no plates flew. We cooked with care, the way my grandmother had taught me. The signature dish, the one that started it all, was the truffle risotto, creamy, balanced, with truffles shaved fresh and a finish that whispered of home. I plated one myself that evening, the steam rising like a memory. As I carried it out, the dining room fell into a comfortable hum, tables filled with locals, food lovers, couples, sharing bites. At table 9, a familiar figure sat alone, his order always the same. Ethan Caldwell looked up as I approached, his smile subtle but genuine. He'd invested quietly, never interfering, never claiming credit. He came as a guest, nothing more. Another perfect one, he said, taking the plate. I lingered, wiping my hands on a towel. What do you taste tonight? He took a bite, eyes closing briefly. Love, he said simply, the kind that doesn't shout. I laughed softly, sitting across from him for the first time, as a guest, not a chef on duty. Today, I cooked for the people who believed when no one else did. For Grandma, for the girl who thought she'd never get here. Ethan nodded, his gaze warm. And for yourself? Yes, I admitted, my voice steady. Finally, for me. We ate in companionable silence, the risotto bridging the year between us. Ethan had opened doors, but I'd walked through them on my own terms. No more enduring unwanted touches, no more swallowing insults. Maison de Fou was mine, built on talent, not tolerance. The team I'd assembled cooked with joy, their skills blooming without fear. Reviews trickled in, praising the heart in every dish, the way flavors felt like stories. Ethan finished his plate, setting the spoon down. You've done what few do, Sofia. Turned fire into warmth. I looked around the room, filled plates, smiling faces, the soft clatter of a kitchen in harmony. It's not perfect, I said, but it's honest, and that's enough. He stood to leave, pausing. Same time next week? I smiled. Always a table for you. As he left, I returned to the kitchen, the scent of truffles lingering like Grandma's hug. At 23, I'd learned cooking wasn't about proving worth to men like Hank. It was about giving people a moment of care, of feeling valued through a bite. Ethan's quiet support had shown me belief could come without demands. The fire that once burned in anger now warmed a home of my own making. I didn't know what tomorrow held more reviews, expansions, challenges. But as I stirred the next pot, the aroma rising, I knew my heart had stayed here, in this kitchen, with flavors that spoke of resilience and love. Grandma's legacy lived in every dish, and mine was just beginning. The world outside was vast, but in Maison de Fou, I'd found my place, and it tasted like everything I'd ever dreamed.